The sanctuary of Elysium floated in the dead space between empires, a monument to a peace forged over millennia. Here, the great powers of the galaxy, beings of light, crystal, and perfect logic, had gathered to dictate the terms of surrender to a young, belligerent species from the galactic fringe. The war was over. The stalemate had been a fluke. It was time for the upstart humans to learn their place. But what if the stalemate wasn't an accident? What if the peace talks were not a negotiation, but the final move in a war they had already lost? What happens when the children you came to punish reveal they have been the masters of the game all along? This is the story of the day humanity walked out of the truce talks and brought the galaxy to its knees. Before we witness the fall of empires, take a moment to subscribe and empower our mission. Your support is the energy that fuels this channel. All right, find your seat at the table. Let's begin the story. For the first time in 200 years, the guns were silent. The long, brutal war against the Cthar Imperium and its allies was over. A stalemate had been reached, born of exhaustion and attrition. And now, on the neutral station sanctuary, the architects of the old order had gathered to dictate the terms of the new peace. In her small, sterile quarters, junior diplomatic attaché Anya Sharma ignored the sounds of celebration echoing through the station's corridors. While the senior delegates toasted the end of hostilities, she was engaged in a far more sobering ritual. She was reading the fine print. The Eternal Peace Treaty was a monument of digital text, over 10,000 pages of dense, legalistic language, cross-referenced with 1,000 years of hegemony case law. It was designed to be skimmed, not studied. The main articles were filled with promises of harmony, cooperation, and mutual prosperity. But Anya's instructors at the academy had drilled one lesson into her above all others. The devil is not in the details. He is in the appendices. Her fingers flew across the data slate, tracing a thread of references. Section 12, paragraph 233, which cited Hegemony Mandate 7, Gamma, which, in turn, deferred to Appendix 47B. There it was. Her blood ran cold. The language was deliberately obscure, buried under layers of procedural jargon. But its meaning was brutally clear. In the interest of promoting regional stability and cultural integration, elder species of the hegemony shall be granted the right to establish guidance outposts on any developing world that has not been a spacefaring member for at least 500 years. Guidance outposts, a sanitized term for military bases. The clause applied to New Mars, to the Titan colony, to every fledgling world humanity had bled for. There was more. The Hegemony Council reserves the right to make resource allocation adjustments at its discretion to ensure the optimal distribution of strategic materials for the greater good. Legalized theft. Earth held 1 vote on a council of 22. The elder species held 12. Their discretion would be absolute. Anya stood, her heart hammering. This wasn't a peace treaty. It was a gilded cage. A surrender document disguised as a victory celebration. She found High Ambassador Kalen Vance in the main observation lounge, holding a glass of sparkling blue Xylosian nectar, schmoozing with the enemy. Vance was a good man, but he was tired. 2 centuries of war had worn him down. He wanted peace, and that desire had made him blind. "Sir," Anya said, her voice a low, urgent whisper. "We have a problem." Appendix 47B. Vance waved a dismissive hand, a weary smile on his face. "Anya, for heaven's sake, not now. The war is over. The legal team cleared the treaty this morning. It's fine. Sir, with respect, the legal team is either incompetent or complicit," she said, holding up her slate. "Look, guidance outposts. Resource allocation adjustments. This isn't peace. It's a death sentence for our sovereignty." Vance's face paled as he read. The tired lines around his eyes deepened. This can't be right. We negotiated for months. Warlord Zorg himself assured me." "They lied, sir," Anya said simply. "They buried it, assuming no one would have the stamina to dig this deep." A soft, melodic chime echoed through the lounge. The signing ceremony was about to begin. "What do we do?" Vance whispered, his diplomatic confidence shattered. "If we refuse now, they'll call it a breach of the armistice. The war will start again. We can't survive another round, Anya." Anya's gaze hardened. "We won't survive this either, sir. Not as a free people. The Grand Convocation Hall was a breathtaking spectacle of power. The Supreme Arbiter, an ancient being of immense gravitas, floated at the center. The holographic treaty glowed in the air, a symbol of hope for a war-weary galaxy. One by one, the ambassadors approached, placing a hand or appendage on the scanner, their signatures appearing in glowing script. Representing the Terran Federation, the Arbiter announced, High Ambassador Kalen Vance and Attaché Anya Sharma. They walked forward. The eyes of the galaxy were upon them. Vance hesitated, his hand trembling inches above the scanner. He looked at Anya, his eyes pleading for an easy answer she could not give. Sir, she whispered, her voice for him alone. Asterisk, once you sign this, there's no going back. Humanity becomes a resource, a tool, nothing more. Asterisk. The Arbiter's gaze narrowed. Is there a problem, Ambassador? Warlord Zorg of the Kthar Imperium, a hulking, reptilian warrior, let out a low growl of impatience. Vance looked at the expectant, predatory faces of the hegemony delegates. He looked at the hope in the eyes of the younger species. He flinched. The weight was too much. No, he said, his voice barely a whisper. No problem. He placed his hand on the scanner. It glowed a bright, final green. A sigh of relief rippled through the hegemony representatives. All eyes turned to Anya. She stepped forward. She looked not at the treaty, but directly at the Supreme Arbiter. Her voice, when she spoke, was not a whisper. It was as clear and cold as a steel blade. I refuse to sign. The hall went utterly, completely silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the station's life support. Perhaps the attaché misunderstands the procedure. The Arbiter said slowly, its voice dripping with condescension. This is a mere formality. The treaty has been agreed upon. I understand perfectly. Anya replied, her voice steady, though her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. And I cannot, in good conscience, sign a document that would effectively enslave every developing world in this sector, including my own. A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd. Warlord Zorg surged forward, his scales flashing a deep, angry red. Outrageous. The humans agreed to all terms. This is a deliberate insult. Did we? Anya's voice rose, cutting through the noise. She held up her data slate, and with a flick of her thumb, projected the damning clauses onto the main holographic display for all to see. The deceptive, buried text now floated in the air, glowing like a poison. Did we agree to Section 12, Paragraph 233, which allows the Kthar Imperium to establish military bases on our colonies? She demanded. Did we agree to Section 29, which permits this council to redirect our resources as they see fit, whenever they deem it optimal? The murmurs grew louder, more confused. Representatives from the younger species, the Lyrans, the Proxima colonists, the Tidy, were now frantically checking their own copies of the treaty. These provisions are for the greater good, the Arbiter said, its voice losing its serene edge. For stability. For control, Anya countered. This is not a peace treaty. It is a surrender document. And humanity does not surrender. Chaos erupted. What have you done? Vance gasped, grabbing her arm. Earth isn't ready for a war with the entire hegemony. Earth isn't ready to be a slave world either, she shot back, pulling her arm free. Two geode ascendancy security drones floated toward them, their crystalline forms humming with barely contained energy. Attaché Sharma, you will come with us. Your actions constitute an act of diplomatic treason. They pushed past the stunned Ambassador Vance, taking Anya by both arms. She didn't resist, but as they led her away, her thumb brushed against the cuff of her uniform. A tiny, woven filament within the fabric pulsed once, releasing a single, compressed quantum pulse transmission. A data packet containing the highlighted treaty clauses, her own authorization code, and a single, desperate distress signal. It was a shot in the dark, a message in a bottle thrown into a cosmic ocean. But it was all she had left. The cell was a small, white, sterile box deep within. The station's security wing. For 8 hours, Anya sat in silence, her mind a whirlwind of calculations. Best case, Earth received her message and responded. Worst case, they sacrificed her to appease the hegemony, and she became a forgotten footnote in the history of humanity's subjugation. The door finally hissed open. A human figure stood there, flanked by 2 armed Marines in black Terran Federation armor. She was tall, with silver streaks in her dark hair and eyes that held the cold, hard light of a distant star. On her collar was the insignia of a fleet admiral. Eva Rostova, the Butcher of Orion, the hero of the Cathar War, the most feared military commander in human history. Junior attaché Anya Sharma, the admiral said, her voice a low, gravelly command. You have created a significant diplomatic incident. Anya shot to her feet, standing at perfect attention. Yes, Admiral. I believe I have. Your transmission was received by High Command 6 hours ago. Rostova continued, her expression unreadable. Your analysis of the treaty was accurate. Earth formally rejects the hegemony's terms. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost buckled Anya's knees, washed over her. They agreed with me? A grim, dangerous smile touched Rostova's lips. Let's just say you accelerated the timeline. The Foreign Ministry wanted to negotiate. I convinced them otherwise. She stepped aside. I trust your debriefing can wait. We have a battle group of 30 destroyers and the fleet carrier TFS Vengeance currently holding position 1 light second off the station's bow. The hegemony is reconsidering its position on your detention. Anya stared at her, speechless. That was a risky move, attaché, Rostova said, her voice softening for the first time. Stupid, even. But it was the right move. Earth doesn't leave its people behind. And we don't sign slave pacts. She extended a hand. Now, let's go turn your diplomatic incident into a revolution. Anya's public exposure of the treaty sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The hegemony, furious and humiliated by Earth's military response, threatened sanctions and a full-scale blockade. But it was too late. The seed of defiance had been planted. A clandestine message arrived for Anya, now acting as Earth's de facto lead negotiator under the terrifying protection of Admiral Rostova's fleet. It was from the Lyran ambassador. Your courage has given my people hope, the message read. We have examined the treaty. You are correct. It is a chain, not a pact. We will not sign. We will stand with Earth. Within days, 6 other developing worlds followed suit. The Proxima colonies, the Tidy Federation, worlds that had been on the verge of signing their freedom away, now found the courage to say no. A secret meeting was convened on a neutral moon, deep in uncharted space. 7 species, small, outmatched, and terrified, gathered under the watchful eyes of the Terran Third Fleet. The Free Systems Alliance was born. It was during this time that Anya received another, even more cryptic message, a request for a private meeting. The sender was an entity known only as Elder Gnosis of the Silent Watchers, an ancient, enigmatic elder species that had remained neutral in galactic politics for eons. They met in the shadow of a gas giant, a single human shuttle docking with a watcher vessel that seemed to be made of woven darkness. Elder Gnosis was not a being of flesh, but of shifting, semi-corporeal shadow and light. This is not the hegemony's first such gambit, child of Earth. Its voice whispered, not through the air, but directly into Anya's mind. Only the first to be so, boldly defied. Why are you helping us? Anya asked, her hand never far from the sidearm at her hip. The hegemony represents stagnation. Order. Control. Gnosis replied. Your species, you are agents of chaos. Of change. The universe requires balance. The strong have grown fat and complacent. It is time for the hungry to have their turn. The Watcher extended a shadowy tendril. A small, crystalline data shard floated from it into Anya's hand. The hegemony has ruled for so long. They have become predictable, Gnosis whispered. Their battle doctrines have not changed in 1,000 years. Their shield frequencies are common knowledge, if one knows where to look. This data contains their weaknesses. Use it. Restore the balance. The hegemony's response to the formation of the Free System. Alliance was swift and brutal. They branded it an act of rebellion and dispatched the legendary Peacekeeper Armada. Over 200 of their most powerful warships, with a single, chilling directive: bring the renegade worlds, starting with Earth, to compliance. The Alliance met them at the edge of the Sol system, in the treacherous, icy chaos of the Kuiper Belt. 7 small, desperate fleets, united under the command of Admiral Eva Rostova, against the most powerful navy in the galaxy. They were outnumbered 3-1. The battle raged for 3 days and 3 nights. It was a maelstrom of plasma, kinetic strikes, and nuclear fire. The Hegemony fleet, commanded by Warlord Zorg himself, used classic, textbook formations. They expected a swift, overwhelming victory. They expected fear and disarray. They were met with chaos. Human chaos. They are not holding a battle line. Zorg roared from the bridge of his flagship as Alliance ships appeared from behind asteroids, striking and vanishing. They fight like rabid animals. Admiral Rostova, using the intelligence from the Silent Watchers, orchestrated a masterpiece of asymmetrical warfare. Lyran corvettes, equipped with human-made sensor jammers, created ghost fleets that drew Hegemony destroyers into minefields. Tidy cruisers, armed with human kinetic cannons, punched through Cthar shields at their precise resonant frequency. And at the center of it all, the Terran Third Fleet fought with a ferocity and a willingness to sacrifice that horrified the ancient, cautious races of the Hegemony. On the third day, Rostova personally led a charge with the TFS Vengeance, drawing the fire of Zorg's flagship, allowing a squadron of Proximan stealth bombers to slip through and cripple its engines. The battle ended in a bloody, shocking stalemate. The mighty Peacekeeper Armada, having taken losses of over 30%, was forced to withdraw and regroup. They had failed. The galaxy held its breath. The invincible Hegemony had been fought to a standstill by a handful of primitives and their terrified friends. The new negotiations took place on Sanctuary, but the room was different. The Grand Table now had seats for all 7 members of the Free Systems Alliance. Anya Sharma, the junior attaché who had been dragged from this room in chains, now sat at the head of the Alliance delegation. Admiral Rostova stood behind her, a silent, menacing promise of what would happen if these talks failed. The Hegemony delegates were shaken. Warlord Zorg was still radiating fury, but Arbiter Lyra's light was dimmer, more uncertain. Elder Gnosis was also present, a silent, shadowy figure at the edge of the room, observing as a neutral mediator. The negotiations were tense, but the power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The Hegemony was no longer dictating. They were, for the first time in millennia, truly negotiating. Finally, after 2 long weeks, a new document was drafted. Not a treaty, an accord. The Elysian Accords. It was everything the first treaty was not. It guaranteed full sovereignty for all member worlds. It established a new, reformed council where elder and developing species had equal representation. It mandated absolute transparency, with all provisions written in clear, simple language, and all appendices subject to public review. It prohibited unilateral military action. It was fair. It was just. It was a new beginning. The signing ceremony was a quiet, solemn affair. One by one, the delegates signed. The Lyran, the Tidy, even Arbiter Lyra of the Lumini. Warlord Zorg was the last. His claw trembled above the scanner for a long moment. Then he, too, signed, his mandibles clicking in a sound of barely suppressed rage. Finally, Elder Gnosis turned its shadowy gaze to the Alliance. And humanity? Admiral Rostova looked at Anya. Attaché Sharma was the first to recognize the poison in the old treaty. It is only fitting that she be the one to approve the antidote. All eyes turned to Anya. She took a deep breath and stood. I have read every word of this document, she said, her voice ringing with the authority she had earned with her courage. Unlike the Eternal Peace Treaty, this accord is not a chain. It is a foundation upon which a true partnership between all species can be built. Earth and the Free Systems Alliance support it fully. A murmur of genuine, heartfelt approval ran around the table. Later that night, Anya stood in the observation lounge, looking out at the endless sea of stars. Rostova came to stand beside her. You did it, kid, the old admiral said, her voice softer than Anya had ever heard it. You stared into the abyss, and you didn't blink. You changed the galaxy by reading the fine print. Anya looked at the signed accords, glowing on her data slate. A symbol of a future that had been bought with defiance and blood. No, Admiral, she said quietly. We just gave it a chance to change itself.